welcome to Get Outdoors with Hook Outdoors. I'm your host, Dan Hook, and today I'm joined again by Evan Barker, and we're going to discuss something that has always intrigued me, is the vast array and variety of fishing lines out there. You know, I'm a little bit long in the tooth anymore, so, when I was growing up fishing, it was pretty basic. You had monofilament, and that was about it. And now there's just everything. You got braids and fluorocarbons, polymers, copolymers, and just everything. And I just kind of want to dive into that subject a little bit today and go from there and just see what it's all about. And I guess my first thing to Evan is, the types of lines that he uses, and if there's some that he doesn't use, and the differences in between them. Is he a monofilament kind of person? Is he more into the fluorocarbon and that sort of thing there? So Evan, what kind of line do you use, or given the technique that you have going on at the time?
So I keep it pretty simple. I just use the three main types, braid, fluorocarbon, and monofilament. And it all just depends on what I'm going to be doing. So I'll real quick kind of break down what each of them are. The best thing about fluorocarbon is it's clear, it's translucent under the water, and it has no stretch. But really, the best thing about fluorocarbon is it's clear. I mean, the fish, supposedly that's what they advertise. They can't see it under the water. But then moving on to monofilament, it's it's not as translucent as fluorocarbon, and the monofilament, it floats, and it has just a little bit of stretch in it. And kind of backtracking to the fluorocarbon, I forgot to mention that fluorocarbon sinks. It does not float like monofilament. And then the braid, I use braid in two different mindsets. I use it on my frogging rod. I've got a 7-foot extra heavy rod with a fast reel from fishing a frog, and then I've got 15-pound yellow Suffix braid attached to a 8-pound fluorocarbon leader for all my spinning rod fishing, whether I'm shaky head and drop shot and Ned rig and all that stuff. So the main thing with when it comes to choosing a line is what I plan on using it for.
And why do you like you were talking about your braid setup, why do you choose braid for those particular techniques? Braid was a leader. What is the reasoning behind that decision?
So when I'm finesse fishing, I got spinning rod in my hand, light line, light tackle, and the main thing with the braid fluorocarbon setup is just the sensitivity. When you tie a fluorocarbon leader to braid, and you're down there dragging on rocks or fishing it through a brush pile, whatever it be, I can feel, I know exactly what my bait's doing any time that it's down there, and that's really the main thing. And especially fishing in the summer down here at Cave Run, it makes a huge difference on detecting light bites. Because them fish, they aren't going to be extremely aggressive. When that water's 85, 90 degrees sometimes, they're not going to be extremely aggressive as far as eating your bait, where you just really know that they're on it. Sometimes you'll just be dragging, and then you'll just feel that one little tick, and then it'll just feel kind of spongy. But with the as opposed to fishing, with a straight monofilament or straight fluorocarbon spinning rod setup, they can be sensitive sometimes, but you really get the maximum output to your spinning tackle when you're finesse fishing when you use the braided fluorocarbon leader.
As far as like crankbait fishing goes, which I think is what a lot of your day tripper fishermen are more apt to throw a crankbait or a spinnerbait or something like that. But let's just say a crankbait setup for just a common everyday fisherman. Is that a mono setup? Is that a fluoro setup? Is it a braid set? I mean, what is the line of choice if you're just throwing crankbaits and just a medium running crankbait, and you're just working it around rock or timber or something like that?
So really going along from crankbaits, anytime that I'm fishing a moving bait besides the topwater, I'm going to be fishing it on fluorocarbon. So any sort of moving bait, whether it be a spinnerbait, a chatterbait, square bill crankbait, deep crankbait, I'm going to be fishing it on fluorocarbon, but it kind of varies on the line size that I choose. We'll start out, everybody loves throwing a square bill. Everybody's got the Strike King KVD 1.5s and 2.5 square bills. And, I'm going to fish it more on like 15-pound fluorocarbon, mainly because I'm going to be fishing that square bill around cover like rocks and timber, because that's what Strike King and everybody there that designed the bait, that's what they designed it to do, is to deflect it off of cover, whether it be rocks, stumps, anything like that. So I just feel more comfortable with the 15-pound line as opposed to I know some guys who fish it on 10, 12-pound fluorocarbon. Me personally, I just feel more confident fishing it on 15, and kind of going down a little bit deeper into like a Spro rock crawler, Bandit 300, some form of crankbait in that depth. I'm going to be fishing it on 12-pound fluorocarbon, and that's just kind of to get that bait down to its max depth, where it's supposed to be. And both of those baits are in the 10 to 12 foot range. So with that 10-pound fluorocarbon, I feel confident that bait is always going to be getting down there to where it needs to be.
Okay, so, and you were talking about how you were using the fluoro for anything other than topwater, and you use the mono for the topwater, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, and that's just because the mono doesn't sink, and versus where the fluoro does sink, and it'll just mess up the action of that topwater lure you're trying to use. Is that right?
If you're using fluorocarbon on a topwater, that line, it's going to be wanting to sink, because fluorocarbon, it doesn't float like monofilament does, so it's going to be wanting to sink as you're trying to work your topwater, and that just really, it's just not my thing. I know some guys who do it, but it's just a whole lot easier on me, and I feel more effective when I'm using monofilament, and it's just simply because it floats. It's easier to work my baits on the top of the water.
Right.
But actually, another thing, buzz baits. It's a topwater, but it's one of those things. I still fish buzz bait on fluorocarbon.
Okay.
Because I'm fishing a buzz bait, and everybody's fishing a buzz bait. You're constantly reeling it, keeping it on top of the water. So I don't really see the need there for monofilament. Plus on my fluorocarbon rods, that I kind of double up my buzz baits on my light worm rods. My 7-foot medium heavies up to like my 7.3 medium heavies. They've already got 15-pound fluorocarbon on them, and that's personally what I like throwing a buzz bait on.
Now, is there ever an occasion, like we have muskie here at Cave Run, and so braid is the big deal with these muskie fishermen anymore. Is there an occasion where you're bass fishing that you're just nothing but braid, no leader, that you're just tied straight to whatever you're throwing?
Here at Cave Run, really the only time I'll ever have straight braid on a rod. It's rare, but if I'm throwing a frog in the grass, that's the only time I'll fish straight braid on a rod.
And why is that?
Really, so fluorocarbon, it still has just minimal stretch, right, and just at the minimum. But still, when you on a frog, when you're working your frog and you get a blow up, and you rear back, and you have to set the hook as hard as you possibly can on that frog.
Right.
The shock from the fluorocarbon, from when it goes from your rod down to your knot or wherever it might be, if you have any form of weak spot, or even really if you don't have a weak spot or anything like that in your line, right, fluorocarbon, if you set the hook too hard and you put shock in your line, right, sometimes it'll break. Okay. So that's why I use the braid, because it has zero stretch. And when I'm throwing a frog, I'm throwing it on 50-pound braid. So that just helps me when I'm fishing a frog. I'm fishing it in just pure slop, right, just textbook frog fishing in the grass, and that braid on the heavy rod, it helps me get that fish out of the grass.
Now, other than the topwater, is there, I guess, an occasion or a time that you fish mono other than topwater, as far as all that goes, or is that pretty much just strictly for your topwater use? Not really. I used to fish a jerkbait on monofilament, and
from learning how to fish a jerkbait and kind of figuring out the things as they go with that jerkbait, I've learned that it's better for me to throw it on fluorocarbon, because with that monofilament, where it has that little bit of stretch and it kind of absorbs the blows, like as you're ripping that jerkbait, it's not as sensitive for me if I'm fishing it on monofilament as if I was fishing it on fluorocarbon. So that's kind of why I switched it up. That was really the only thing that I ever fished besides the topwater on monofilament. But now I'm on fluorocarbon on jerkbaits.
Now, like if you were fishing somewhere and you were only allowed to fish one type of line, what would be your go-to line that you would just try to make work, regardless of what technique you were using?
I would fish. More than likely, I would bring nothing but fluorocarbon, and that's because I can safely fish anything that I really want to fish. I can fish it on fluorocarbon. Anything from dragging a big worm out deep to flipping a jig and a lay down.
Right.
To fishing a crankbait out deep, or fishing any form of square bill, anything like that, spinnerbait. I can really do it all with fluorocarbon, so that would definitely be my choice.
Now, is there a brand of line that you tend to favor over others?
P-line tactical fluorocarbon. I started using it this year. It's thin. It's strong, abrasion resistant. I haven't had any problems out of my P-line fluorocarbon. And I'm even fishing 8-pound line in thick brush piles and rock piles and all that stuff. Okay. But I've never ran into the issue of it not being strong enough or having enough abrasion resistance to really make me worry. Any time I pick up a rod that has P-line tactical fluorocarbon on it, or for that matter, any type of P-line, I feel confident that I'm going to be able to fish to the best of my ability.
One thing we forgot to talk about was copolymer, Evan. Have you ever used copolymer much, and what's been your experience with it?
It was back a few years ago. I tried copolymer. Best I remember, it was either 12 or 15 pound P-line copolymer, and that's honestly the only bad experience I've ever had out of P-line. It was a P-line fluoro clear. I just got about maybe two to 3 weeks of I fished it hard, but really just about 2 weeks of hard fishing out of that line right there. And after those 2 weeks, the abrasion resistance just went down south about as far as you could get, and it just got weak. But if you've got the money and you want to put every 3 weeks or a month at most, you want to put a new line on your reels, copolymer, it could be what you want to use, but it's just not for me.
Okay. And now back to our regular line discussion as far as line sizes and that sort of thing. Is there any sizes that are more specific to a given technique, as far as is there certain pound test monos that tend to work better for top waters? Is there certain pound test lines, be it the fluorocarbon, that work better depending on whether you're using a shallow runner or a medium runner crankbait and that sort of thing?
So on monofilament for my top water fishing, I like the light line. I'm going to fish it on usually 10-pound monofilament. I fish on my monofilament. I actually fish Suffolk Siege or Suffolk Advanced, and I feel good with the 10-pound line. But if I'm fishing around a bunch of stick ups, stumps, lay downs, all that stuff, I might think about bumping it up to about 12 pounds. But 12's about my max when it comes to monofilament on top water. But when it comes to fluorocarbon, I use everything from 8-pound fluorocarbon all the way up to 20, just kind of depending on the situation. When I'm finesse fishing, throwing a Ned rig, drop shot, shaky head, whatever it be, I'm going to be fishing it on that 8-pound fluorocarbon, that light line, with the light spinning rod, and to a braid backing, and that's just kind of my personal preference. That's what a lot of people have started using over really the past 5 years. About everybody who picks up a spinning rod and really wants to get good with it, they use that braid fluorocarbon leader. But for me, when I'm using a fluorocarbon leader, it's always 8-pound. And then when I get up into about the next size up is I'll use 10 or 12 on my deeper crankbaits, like 5XD, Strike Kings, 6XDs, all that. And the 10 to 12 pound line, it's really just to get that bait down to its max depth. A 5XD is marketed to run, I think it's anywhere from 15 to 17 feet in that ballpark. And if I'm using 10 pound or 12 pound fluorocarbon, I'm gonna have that bait down there where it needs to be. And when I go up to 15, I use a lot of 15 pound P-line fluorocarbon. I'll do anything from drag jigs to throwing spinner baits to fishing square bills, anything like that, chatterbaits, Carolina rig. I'll throw a lot of times on a 12 pound mainline fluorocarbon. So, well, my bad, I said 12. Never mind, I fished on a 15 pound fluorocarbon backing. And that's the one that I utilize the most. I fish just a lot of 15 pound fluorocarbon. Okay. And then when you get up into the higher weights, you got 20 pound fluorocarbon, and I've got that on just 2 rods in my boat. I've got it on 2 flipping sticks. Anytime that water's up in the bushes, or I'm flipping grass or laydowns, anything like that, I'm gonna be flipping 20 pound fluorocarbon.
Evan, when you're deciding what size and what type of line you're going to use for the given technique, does hookset figure into that equation as far as when you come up with your final decision on what you're going to use?
Really, the only time I worry about the hook set on a line is when I'm fishing fluorocarbon. Monofilament, it has the stretch, so that kind of absorbs it, and the braid. The braid, it has no stretch whatsoever. But when you're fishing it, when you're fishing just straight braid, rather, you're fishing 40 to really 60 pound braid. So there's not much you're gonna have to worry about there on your hook set, unless you have like a nick in your line or some form of bad spot.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have to worry about anything with that heavy a line.
No.
But when it comes to fluorocarbon, there's 2 different hook sets that I'll use. It depends on the bait, rather. If I'm fishing like a worm or anything like that up shallow, kind of flipping like a Senko around or something like that, on really the only time I worry about it's on like 15 pound or less fluorocarbon. And if I'm flipping a worm around or something like that, I won't do a slackline hook set, because when you do a slackline hook set, what that means really on a slackline hook set is when you doing a slackline hook set, you're dropping your rod down and putting slack in the line, and you're jerking back really as hard as you can. And what that does is that puts a lot of stress in the line. And so instead, what I'll do is, when I get bit and I see that I'm getting bit, I'll start reeling down until I feel pressure on the rod tip, and then I'll just swoop back really hard on the hook set, and you'll never have to worry about fluorocarbon getting shocked or breaking on that style of hook set. But when it comes to if I'm flipping bushes or anything like that with a heavier fluorocarbon, like a 20 pound fluorocarbon, I don't worry too much about shocking it on a slackline hook set. Really, when I'm flipping bushes, all I'm worried about is hitting them hard and getting them out of the bushes as quick as possible. So that I really don't worry about, because it's got a thick enough diameter when it gets up to 20 pound fluorocarbon that there's really not that much worry when doing a slackline hook set.
What's the typical, you're talking about having to change out the cold polymer every few months or so. With the fluorocarbon, what's your typical lifespan there? I mean, do you have to change it once a year, twice a year? I mean, is it good for a while? What's the lifespan of a spool of fluorocarbon?
My preference is I really don't want to let fluorocarbon or anything like that set on a reel for too awful long. So I like to change it at least every at least every about 4 months. I mean, I know a lot of guys do it more than that, but me, I've never really had that bad of a problem out of my line.
Right.
So I feel comfortable when I'll change my line about every 4 months.
Okay.
So like really it's when I first get into spring fishing, I'll change my line around. Then when it changes into summer fishing, I'll kind of lighten it up a little bit, with the clear water and all that stuff. And then fall, I kind of keep the same mindset because it's clear water. But then, when you're going into winter, going down to Cumberland and stuff like that, you're gonna have fresh line for going down there and fishing all winter.
Okay.
So that's really how I dictate when I switch lines. So yeah, about every 4 months is a good number.
All right, cool. Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up again for today. And this has been our discussion on various types of fishing line and our opinion on what we think the best choice is given the type of fishing and the conditions that you're fishing in. Keep in mind, folks, that these shows are recorded live at our Hook Outdoors retail location here on Cave Run Lake. So you will hear the occasional customer come in and the occasional phone ring or even the occasional cooler kick on and off. So bear that in mind and just tune in next time. Keep up with us. We do a weekly fishing report and we'll give fishing tips and just do general shows every week. And message us through Hook Outdoors, our Facebook page. If you got any questions and you want to know what's going on at the store or going on at the lake in general, we'll be more than glad to get back with you. And as always, this is Dan Hook with Evan Barker, and get outdoors with Hook Outdoors.